When I was growing up, I always knew my sister Lily was the favorite. My parents showered her with attention, praise, and gifts, while I was left to figure things out on my own. I didn't complain much. I worked hard, built a career, and became financially independent. But my grandfather, the only person who ever saw me for who I was, left me a substantial inheritance when he passed away. His will clearly named me as the beneficiary. Months later, my parents called me into the living room, looking unusually nervous. My mother spoke first, saying, "We think it's only fair if you share your inheritance with Lily. After all, she needs it more than you." My father added, "You're already doing fine. Lily has dreams and responsibilities. It would be selfish not to help her." I stared at them, stunned. They weren't asking, they were trying to convince me to sign papers transferring part of my inheritance to my sister. I refused, politely at first, then firmly. Grandpa left it to me for a reason. I won't betray his wishes. They looked furious, accusing me of being ungrateful and cold-hearted. For weeks, they pressured me, calling, guilt-tripping, even having Lily cry on the phone about how much she deserved it. I nearly caved out of exhaustion, but something in me said to stand strong. What they didn't know was that my grandfather's lawyer had prepared everything airtight. Not only was the inheritance locked in my name, but there was also a clause. If anyone tried to pressure me into giving it up, the estate would be reevaluated and their access to certain family trust funds could be revoked. The lawyer had anticipated manipulation and ensured I was protected. When my parents finally tried to bring legal documents for me to sign, I called the lawyer in front of them. Within days, my parents were notified that their meddling had triggered the clause. They lost access to a significant trust fund that they had relied on for years. Suddenly, their plan to favor Lily backfired spectacularly. The regret was instant. They begged me to fix it, but it was too late. The trust was gone, and so was their leverage. For once, I held the power. I didn't take joy in watching them panic, but I couldn't help feeling vindicated. Grandpa had known exactly how things would play out. Now, Lily barely speaks to me, and my parents act distant. But strangely enough, I feel freer than ever. I didn't just keep my inheritance. I kept my dignity. After the fallout, I thought the storm had passed. My parents avoided me, and Lily unfollowed me on every social media platform. I figured they'd eventually cool off and accept reality. But one evening, I got a call from an old friend who still lived in my hometown. She said Lily had been telling everyone at church and around town that I had stolen her rightful inheritance. Apparently, I was being painted as the greedy sibling who left my poor sister struggling. At first, I laughed. It was pathetic, really. But then I realized the rumors were starting to affect my reputation. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly reached out, demanding to know why I was being so cruel. Even a few cousins I was close to messaged me with passive-aggressive comments. It was clear Lily and my parents were running a full-blown smear campaign. I decided not to respond emotionally. Instead, I gathered proof. The lawyer had given me a copy of my grandfather's will, along with a letter he had written explaining why times he left the inheritance solely to me. Grandpa had seen how Lily was spoiled and dependent, while I had built my life on my own. His words were blunt, almost brutal, but they were undeniable. At the next family gathering, where I knew the whispers would be loudest, I brought copies of the letter and the will. When one of my uncles made a snide comment about me keeping all the money to myself, I calmly handed him the documents and said, "Maybe you should read what Grandpa actually wanted." Soon, the entire living room went silent as people passed the papers around. By the end of the night, Lily was in tears, and my parents looked pale. They had lost not only the trust fund, but also their credibility. The family began to realize who was really manipulating the story. I didn't need to raise my voice or start an argument. Grandpa's words did all the work. But I could see it in Lily's eyes. This wasn't the end. She was plotting something else. A few weeks later, things went quiet. Too quiet. My parents stopped calling altogether, and Lily's smear campaign suddenly vanished from social media. For a moment, I thought maybe they had finally given up, but I should have known better. One morning, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Lily's lawyer. She was filing a lawsuit, claiming I had undue influence over Grandpa and manipulated him into leaving me the inheritance. The accusation was absurd, but still, it meant a court battle. My parents were backing her completely, and I knew they'd do anything to paint me as the villain. I felt a pang of fear at first. Court cases aren't cheap, and the stress alone could drain anyone. But then I remembered Grandpa's foresight. He hadn't just left me the inheritance. He had also left a series of voice recordings with his lawyer, explaining in detail why he made the decision. In them, he talked about Lily's entitlement, my parents' favoritism, and how he wanted at least one grandchild to have a fair chance without being dragged down by manipulation. When my lawyer presented those recordings in pretrial discovery, Lily's entire case began to collapse. Her lawyer looked embarrassed, and my parents avoided my eyes completely. By the time the judge reviewed the documents and recordings, the lawsuit was dismissed before it even reached trial. Lily stormed out of the courthouse in tears, and my parents followed her, whispering angrily. I just stood there, calm, finally realizing the full extent of Grandpa's wisdom. He hadn't just left me money, he had left me armor. But as I walked to my car, I noticed Lily watching me from across the parking lot, her face twisted with rage. And in that moment, I knew she wasn't done yet. Not long after the lawsuit failed, strange things started happening. At first, it was small anonymous emails accusing me of cheating at work, calls to my office about ethical concerns, and even fake negative reviews about my business online. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. Lily had moved from legal attacks to trying to ruin my professional life. One evening, as I was leaving work, I noticed someone had keyed my car. The words thief were carved deep into the paint. My stomach dropped. This wasn't just petty, it was malicious. I called the police, but with no cameras nearby, there wasn't much they could do. I decided to set a trap. I installed discrete security cameras around my house and parked my car in the same spot every night. It didn't take long. On the third night, around 2 a.m., I caught Lily on video, creeping up with a spray can in her hand. She wrote Liar across my garage door before running off. The next morning, I handed the footage straight to the police. They were stunned when they saw who it was. My sister. She was arrested for vandalism within days. My parents rushed to her defense, screaming that I was destroying the family by pressing charges, but this time, no one believed them. The evidence was crystal clear. For the first time, Lily faced real consequences. Her perfect favorite daughter image shattered. She lost her job after the arrest made the local paper, and many of those who once pitied her now avoided her. I should have felt satisfied, but instead, I felt an ache in my chest. This wasn't what I wanted. I just wanted peace. But Lily's obsession with taking what was mine had dragged us into a war I never asked for. And deep down, I feared this was still not over. After Lily's arrest, I thought she would finally back off. But humiliation can twist a person, and my sister was more determined than ever. Weeks passed, and while she kept a low profile publicly, I started noticing unsettling signs. One night, I came home to find my front door slightly open. My heart pounded as I stepped inside. Nothing was stolen, but I could tell someone had been there. Drawers opened, papers scattered, and my safe slightly moved. I reported it, but without signs of forced entry. The police couldn't do much. Then came the phone call. Lily's voice was shaky, almost frantic. "You ruined my life," she hissed. "You think you've won, but you don't understand. That money was supposed to be mine. I'll make sure you lose everything like you made me lose everything." And then she hung up. That was my breaking point. I tightened my security system, hired an attorney to put a restraining order in place, and warned my employer in case she tried another smear attempt. But I also knew I couldn't keep living in constant fear. The turning point came when my lawyer uncovered something shocking. Lily had been digging through my grandfather's old accounts, trying to fabricate evidence that I coerced him into writing the will. What she didn't realize was that all her attempts left a digital trail. Emails, fake documents, even messages where she discussed her plan with a friend. My lawyer gathered everything and presented it to the authorities. This time, it wasn't just vandalism. Lily was charged with attempted fraud and evidence tampering. My parents begged me not to press forward, crying about how this would destroy her future. But I had to ask myself, what about times future? How many times was I supposed to forgive her obsession before she dragged me down with her? For the first time, I looked at my sister not as family, but as a threat. And I knew this was the final battle. The trial for Lily's fraud charges dragged on for months, and during that time, the cracks in my family's facade grew wider than ever. My parents visited me once, begging me to drop everything. My mother cried, saying, "She's your sister, for God's sake." Families forgive, but I couldn't bring myself to give in anymore. I told her calmly, forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to destroy me over and over again. When the court hearings began, Lily walked in with her chin high, but her eyes betrayed her fear. The prosecutors presented the emails, The fake documents she tried to create, and even a recorded conversation with the friend she had roped into her scheme. It was undeniable. Lily's carefully built golden child image shattered under the weight of the truth. My parents sat in the front row, pale and silent. For years they had insisted Lily could do no wrong, that I was too harsh, too selfish, too distant. Now, they were watching their favorite daughter exposed as a manipulator who had gone too far. The judge's ruling was clear. Lily was guilty. She avoided serious prison time thanks to a plea deal, but she was given probation, heavy fines, and mandatory counseling. It was a devastating blow to her pride, and the humiliation followed her everywhere she went. After the verdict, I walked past my parents in the hallway. My father wouldn't look at me, but my mother whispered almost in shock, I never thought it would come to this." For the first time, I saw doubt in her eyes. Doubt about the daughter she had defended so fiercely. I didn't gloat. I didn't say, "I told you so." I just left, because in that moment, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval anymore. Grandpa had trusted me. The truth had protected me, and my sister's downfall was of her own making. But deep down, I wondered, could my family ever heal after this? Or was this the permanent end of what little bond we had left? In the weeks after the verdict, the silence from my family was deafening. No calls, no texts, no sudden visits, just quiet. At first, it felt like a relief. For the first time in years, I wasn't waking up to accusations or guilt trips. But at night, lying in bed, the emptiness pressed on me. They weren't just strangers, they were my parents and my sister. One evening, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was shaky, and when I opened it, I realized it was from my mother. Inside, she wrote about how ashamed she felt, how she couldn't believe she had turned a blind eye to Lily's behavior for so long. She admitted they had failed me, that in trying to protect their golden child, they had crushed the one who had stood on her own. She begged for a chance to make things right. I read the letter 3 times. Part of me wanted to crumple it and throw it away. Another part of me, the child who had spent years yearning for recognition, wanted to believe her. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took time to reflect. Meanwhile, Lily had disappeared from the spotlight. Social media gone, her circle of friends vanished, her career in ruins. I heard through distant relatives that she had moved into a small apartment across town and rarely left home. Some said she was broken. Others, that she was still bitter, waiting for her moment to strike again. After days of thinking, I decided to meet my parents for coffee. When I walked in, they looked older, worn down by stress and regret. For the first time, my father spoke without anger. "We were wrong," he admitted quietly. "We thought we were helping her, but we only destroyed you both." Hearing those words didn't heal me instantly, but it was a start. I told them plainly, "If you want to rebuild anything with me, it has to be honest. No more favoritism, no more guilt. I won't let myself be the shadow anymore." They nodded, tears in their eyes. For the first time, I felt like they were listening. But Lily wasn't there, and I knew one day I'd have to decide whether I could ever face her again. It was almost 6 months before Lily resurfaced. I was beginning to think she'd vanished from my life for good, when one night, I got a knock at my door. When I opened it, there she was, thinner, her hair unkempt, her eyes red like she hadn't slept in days. She didn't come in right away. She just stood on my porch, clutching her coat like a shield. Finally, she whispered, "Can I talk to you?" I hesitated, every instinct screaming at me to shut the door. But something in her voice, fragile, desperate, made me step aside. She sat at my kitchen table, looking around like she didn't belong there anymore. For the first time in years, she didn't seem like the golden child. She just looked like my broken sister. "I lost everything," she said quietly. "My job, my friends, my reputation. And it's my fault. I thought, if I had what you had, I'd finally be happy. But I see now, I ruined myself chasing something that wasn't even mine. I wanted to feel angry. I wanted to remind her of every cruel thing she'd done, every sleepless night she caused me. But instead, I just sat in silence, listening. Then she said something that nearly shattered me. "Mom and Dad always made me feel like I deserved more. But I didn't. You were the strong one. You earned it. And I hated you for that." The room was heavy with years of resentment and pain. Part of me wanted to believe she was sincere, that she had finally realized the truth. But part of me couldn't forget how far she'd gone. The lies, the vandalism, the fraud. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Lily," I admitted. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I don't want to hate you either. Not anymore. She nodded, tears sliding down her face. That's fair. I needed to say it. When she left, I stood by the door for a long time, wondering if that was the first step toward healing or the final goodbye. After Lily's visit, I couldn't shake the weight of her words. For days, they replayed in my head. Asterisk, you were the strong one. You earned it. And I hated you for that. Asterisk. It was the first time she had ever admitted the truth, but I wasn't sure if it was repentance or just desperation. My parents called me a week later. They had heard from Lily, and my mother sounded cautiously hopeful. She's trying to change, she said. Maybe this is your chance to rebuild as a family. But I wasn't so sure. Every time I thought of opening the door to her again, my chest tightened with the memory of keyed cars, courtrooms, and betrayal. Could I really risk giving her another chance? Or would it only lead me back into the same chaos? I decided to test her sincerity. Quietly, I asked her to meet me at the community center where Grandpa used to volunteer. I told her, if you want me to even consider letting you back into my life, show me you're serious. Do something real. Prove this isn't just another act. To my surprise, she agreed. Over the next few weeks, she showed up helping at the food pantry, cleaning, even sitting with lonely elderly folks who just needed company. I watched from a distance, half expecting her to slip up. But slowly, I started seeing glimpses of a person I had never known existed beneath her arrogance. One evening, after a long shift of sorting donations, she turned to me and said softly, I don't want your money anymore. I just want my sister back. Those words cut deep. I wanted to believe her. But scars don't fade overnight. Trust takes time, and ours had been shattered. As I drove home that night, I realized the decision was mine alone. Let her in and risk being hurt again, or keep the walls up and live free but alone. The night I drove home after hearing Lily's words, I barely slept. I kept turning over every memory in my mind, the years of favoritism, the smear campaign, the lawsuit, the vandalism. But then I saw her at the community center, shoulders slumped, quietly handing out food to people who had nothing, and for once, not looking for attention. The next weekend, my parents invited me over for dinner. It was the first time in years that they weren't trying to bribe me, guilt me, or lecture me. When I arrived, Lily was already there, sitting stiffly at the table. No smug grin, no entitlement, just silence. We ate quietly for a while, before my father cleared his throat. Your mother and I, we need to say this. We were wrong. For years, we let Lily believe she was entitled to everything, and we made you feel invisible. That was our failure as parents. His voice cracked a little, something I had never heard before. My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. We don't expect forgiveness overnight, but we don't want to lose you. Not anymore. The room was thick with tension. My instinct was to lash out, to remind them of all the times I cried alone while they praised Lily for breathing. But instead, I took a deep breath and said, if we're rebuilding, it's going to be on my terms. No more favoritism. No more guilt trips. If you want me in this family, you treat me with respect. Period. Lily looked up then, her eyes glistening. I know I don't deserve it, she whispered. But I'm asking for one last chance. Not for the money. Not for the inheritance. Just for family. For the first time in years, the house didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt fragile, uncertain, but maybe, just maybe, like the beginning of something different. But I also knew one thing clearly. Even if I gave them all another chance, I would never again hand over my power. Grandpa had trusted me for a reason. For a few weeks, the fragile peace actually held. My parents called me more often, but not to pressure me, just to talk. Sometimes my mom would ask about work, or my dad would share updates about his garden. It felt strange, almost like the relationship we should have had years ago. Lily kept showing up at the community center, even when she thought I wasn't around. I caught her once, sitting on the floor, reading aloud to an elderly man who couldn't see well. He laughed at her terrible accents, and she laughed with him. It was the most genuine I'd seen her in years. But old habits die hard. One evening, during another family dinner, my father slipped. He sighed as Lily talked about struggling to find steady work and said, maybe your sister could help you out, financially, just until you get back on your feet. The table went dead silent. I set my fork down slowly, my eyes locking on him. No, I said firmly. That conversation is over. Forever. My inheritance isn't a family emergency fund. It's what Grandpa trusted times me times with. If you can't accept that, then this piece ends now. My father looked startled, but this time, my mother spoke up before he could say anything else. "She's right," she said, her voice shaking. "We can't go back to old patterns. We promised we'd do better." Lily lowered her head, ashamed. "I don't want her money," she whispered. "I just want to prove I'm not who I used to be." For the first time, I believed her. Still, as I drove home that night, I couldn't ignore the unease in my chest. My parents had slipped once. Would they slip again? And if they did, would I walk away for good? The breaking point came sooner than I expected. A month after that tense dinner, I received a call from my mother late at night. Her voice was frantic, almost panicked. "It's Lily," she said. "She's in trouble. Can you come?" I drove over, my chest tight with dread. When I arrived, Lily was sitting in their living room, her face blotchy from crying. She had been scammed. She'd invested what little money she had left into a shady business opportunity that turned out to be fake. She lost nearly everything. My parents looked at me with desperate eyes. I knew what they were really asking. They wanted me to bail her out, to fix her mistake. Again, I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "I'm sorry she lost money," I said evenly, "but this isn't mine to fix. Lily has to take responsibility." My father's face reddened. "She's your sister. You have more than enough." "Stop." My voice cut through the room like a blade. "This is exactly what destroyed our family before. You keep expecting me to sacrifice everything, while Lily never learns. I won't repeat that cycle." Lily looked up at me, tears streaming. But instead of begging, she nodded. "He's right," she whispered. "I did this, and I'll fix it myself. No more shortcuts. No more depending on anyone else." The silence that followed was heavy. My parents didn't know what to say. For once, Lily had defended me instead of taking advantage. That night, as I left their house, I realized the truth. This was the final test. If my family ever wanted real healing, it wouldn't come from me giving more. It would come from them finally standing on their own. For the first time, I felt like I was walking away free, not because I cut ties, but because I refused to be chained by them anymore. Months passed after that night, and for once, I felt peace. I focused on my own life, my career, my friendships, the things I had built without anyone's help. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for the next phone call filled with demands or guilt. Lily kept her word. She found a modest job, nothing glamorous, but she worked hard and stopped chasing shortcuts. Sometimes I'd see her at the community center, still volunteering. She looked smaller somehow, humbled, but also more human than I'd ever known her to be. My parents struggled the most. They had to face the reality that their golden child wasn't invincible, and that their years of favoritism had damaged both their children. Slowly, they began to change. They didn't push me anymore, didn't hint about money. Our relationship wasn't perfect. Maybe it never would be, but for the first time it felt honest. One evening, I sat with my mother on her porch. She looked at me with teary eyes and said, "Your grandfather was right. You were always stronger than we gave you credit for. We just wish we'd seen it sooner." I didn't reply right away. I just looked at the fading sunset and finally let go of the bitterness I had carried for so long. Not forgiveness, not yet, but freedom. As for Lily, time will tell if our bond can truly heal. I'm cautious, but I'm no longer consumed by anger. If she rebuilds herself honestly, maybe there's a chance for us. If not, I know I'll be fine either way. Because in the end, Grandpa didn't just leave me an inheritance. He left me clarity, that my worth was never defined by my parents' favoritism or by what Lily tried to take from me. It was defined by the life I chose to build on my own terms. And that, more than any sum of money, is the legacy I'll carry forever.